Good evening, everybody. I'm Lynn Castle, Executive Director. Welcome to this wonderful, gorgeous, bright, and happy exhibition. We're really happy to have you guys here tonight. And of course, an exhibition like this wouldn't be possible without our wonderful sponsors, so I'm going to read them off to you. This is generously funded in part by the Texas Commission on the Arts, the National Endowment for the Arts, the Wesley W. Washburn, MD, and Lulu Smith, MD Endowment Fund, the C. Homer and Edith Fuller Chambers Charitable Foundation, the City of Beaumont, and members of the Art Museum of Southeast Texas. If you're not a member, I would encourage you to consider joining the museum. Membership is the backbone of the museum. Memberships start with students and seniors at $25 and go all the way up to $1,000. We really need your membership support, so please consider joining if you're not a member. Additional funding is also provided by the South Arts. And to find out more about the National Endowment for the Art grants and how they impact individuals and communities, please go visit www.arts.gov. So I'm going to turn it over to our Curator of Exhibitions, Caitlin Clay. Caitlin?
Thank you, Lynn. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Art Museum. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for the opening reception of Shawne Major, Majeure and Other Compulsions. Tonight, I have the privilege and pleasure to be in conversation with Shawne herself. And we're going to just do a little bit back and forth about her exhibition and about her artwork. And then at the end of the discussion, if anyone has any questions that you would like to pose to either one of us, we would love to answer them and to hear more about your thoughts on the show. So Shawne, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And we're just going to have to pass this microphone back and forth. But let's start a little bit with your background in art. So you have a degree in painting from the University of Southwestern Louisiana and a master's degree in sculpture from Rutgers University. And through your education and your background, how did that bring you to creating these collages?
How did I get to these collages? Okay, my undergraduate degree was in painting, and when I was a painter, I used acrylic paint, and I added objects to the paint because acrylic paint is really kind of like glue. It's a plastic, and you know, as an undergraduate, trying to figure out textures and trying to figure out your own language as a young artist, and I decided that the objects were way more interesting than the paint. So I got rid of the paint, and then I just used objects. So when I was growing up, I was always sewing, you know, and drawing. But I had great aunts that would come over and show us. They were always doing their own little projects, and I was always crazy to find out, you know, what the project was and to learn to sew. And you know, so I grew up sewing. And so when I came to the time when I needed to figure out how I'm going to put these objects together, sewing was just natural. So I started making these mixed media kind of tapestries, kind of. They're not really tapestries because they're not really woven, but they are collage pieces, but they're sewn. So the sewn part throws people off as far as the collage. Yeah. So that's how I started in. Does that answer that question?
Yeah. Thank you. I guess following up would be, how do you source your materials for your tapestries? There's obviously a lot of different materials in terms of mixed media. We've actually, if you all look closely at the object labels, you'll see what a wide variety of materials that Shawne is using in her pieces. Maybe tell people a little bit about how you get your materials for them.
I get a lot of things on eBay nowadays. It used to be garage sales and secondhand, or people give me stuff. People still give me stuff, but now it's just basically, it's usually eBay. If it's used, it's on eBay, and if it's new, it's wherever I can find it. Like I think the large piece has a lot of new like rope and stuff that I had to source online. But everything, most things have had another life somewhere else. And, I mean, sometimes people give me little boxes of things that they've kept for half their lives, or their grandmother's buttons, or things that are valuable to them, but if it doesn't go into a piece of art, it might end up in a landfill eventually. So I feel like it's saving some little element of a relationship or a soul or a piece of somebody when I use found objects.
Yeah, and I really love that. The show's only been open a few days, right? But we've already had quite a few visitors. And when I've had a chance to walk through the show with them, it's really fun when they're like, oh, that is a necklace I own, or maybe that's a piece of jewelry that my grandmother had. And I know this piece here off to my far right, I think the kids are really going to love because there's like a Spider-Man head in it. And we had a bunch of 8th graders visiting us earlier today that Shawne spoke to, and they all at the same time noticed that turtle that's in there. And they just all yelled, turtle! But it's really exciting to walk through the show and have people tell you a little bit about how they connect with each piece, because maybe they recognize something in it, or the process is very similar to maybe a type of crafting project they've worked in before. But everybody has a different favorite, and it's really neat to see that. In regards to the shapes of your pieces and the sizes, I think you've mentioned to me in the past that the 5x5 pieces are the ones that you really work very closely on because it has to do with your actual physical range. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you size your different pieces and tell people sort of how you work on them at home.
I work on the wall always, so I was just mentioning a while ago that the first time I ever even know how heavy they are is to take them down to show them, and bring them somewhere else. But the 5-foot pieces are really 5 feet because that's as far as I can reach around to sew, like through, and pull it on the other side. The 7-foot piece I had to use upholstery needles that are big and curved in the middle because I couldn't reach, I like the larger works personally because I feel like I can be almost in them. They're big enough and they're sort of like the bigger world. And then the small ones, I like my own work, but the small ones, I don't know. I can't do too many at a time. I get caught. It's just wrong. Just do something big.
I think in your interview with Melissa Messina, which if you all haven't had a chance to pick it up, it's printed in our free gallery guide. You mentioned that you particularly like working in rectangles, and then many people will notice there's actually circles within the compositions. So I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about how shape plays a part in your art making.
Well, it's, when artists have lots of things going through their head when they're doing a piece of work, and not all the decisions are hugely important. Some of them are little things you kind of want to work on in the back of your head. Next time I'm going to, set up more depth or, But big rectangles make me think of doors and windows and beds, but squares just seem more abstract. And since I'm trying to really make abstract art, then, I was just checking that out for a while. I was telling her earlier that the work in here is like over 8 years. It's not everything I did in 8 years, but it's the range that's going on here. So the horizontal pieces, I was mentioning earlier that I always think when you see a horizontal, you think of it as a landscape almost. Like even before you look at what it is, you think, okay. So I was trying to work with that idea of landscapes, but they're still, they're almost starscapes, like this one in particular. But so that's just like one little decision that, I have also a lot of shaped pieces. I did, these 2 dresses are part of about a half a dozen dress pieces that I had made, and I also made a lot of shaped pieces on like stuffed animals that I gutted, and actually I got the idea years ago actually from my sisters here. My 2 sisters are here, but her husband is a hobbyist taxidermist. So I remember years ago I saw the taxidermy he had on the wall, and I was like, wow. So what if the things you want in life, you could just go out and kill and hang them on the wall? But what if it was things like love or success or like things that are not like real tangible things? So anyway, that's how those pieces came along. But the dresses, I was just thinking, having kids, my kids are grown now, but when they were young, they just felt so vulnerable. You're just so afraid of what's going to happen. You always worry about the kids. So they have these glass bulbs on them that are all fragile, and but it's all complex and layered. Anyway, so I know there's more than just shapes and things.
It is so much fun to go through them and say, oh, I have that.
Yeah, no, I showed in Galveston a couple months ago, and somebody came up to me and was like, that is my grandmother's necklace. I know that is the exact same. Yeah, I went to her house and took it. But I used to work with a lot more toys, and so some of the earlier range of the stuff in here has a few more toys and stuff in it. But I started in the last few years thinking that I wanted to make the work more abstract in like a linear drawing kind of way. So that's why that's why you get something like this big one with all the rope in it. But also the other 5-footers all have like a heavy line element, I think. So I was looking for Christmas lights that would burn out, or phone chargers, or anything linear that I could use like a line and draw it and make it more abstract. It kind of makes you less interested in, like, if you have, for instance, a doll head, I mean, you want to just look at that in a piece, right? You know what I mean? So I wanted to kind of not have too many things that were going to draw your attention just to that one object. And so it wouldn't be just about that, it would be the whole, anyway, and more abstract. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And then in relation to the abstraction and this layering, I think you and Melissa talked a little bit about how that relates to the layering of perspectives and reality.
Oh, okay. Yeah, when I first started making these tapestries, it's been like 30 years, my concept was, I kept thinking that, when you're born, it's all the blank slate, there's nothing there, anybody, your parents, everybody around you, whatever they give you is how you see reality for like a long time. So you're seeing through your religion, or you're seeing through the lens of your parents' beliefs, or you're seeing through the lens of reacting against your parents' beliefs or against things. And I thought, but so as you get older, all these different beliefs are on this lens that you're still seeing what's supposed to be a shared reality. So I don't know, and my pieces have gotten heavier as time goes on, so I think that probably means I can't really see like an objective reality anymore, because my lenses are so thick. But it's all metaphors. I hope I do. But so that's how I just thought of, how to start building the pieces, the concept in the first place.
I think it's a wonderful metaphor, especially because as time has gone by, we're seeing so much more information, like we're inundated with images and information between social media and just like globalization. And so it makes sense to me that your pieces have become even heavier with even more in the composition, because that aligns with what's going on in our lives too.
Right. Reality is there's so much before you even can look at an objective reality. You have all the news you've been listening to all day, you have your family's been talking to you all day, or whatever you've been doing, it's all going to color how you see. So.
And I think that leads us really well into talking about your drawings, because this is the first time the drawings have been on display. And earlier you talked about how they are sort of this small focused section of actual collages, some of them which are in this show. And I would like you to talk a little bit more about your drawings and why you decided to move into 2D recently.
Thanks for calling these not 2D, that's cool. They're sort of almost 3D. Well, there's been different times in my career where I've worked on paper, but it's been a really long time and I was really kind of missing it. But also, I was thinking, you know, I get stuck thinking about stuff, you know, like maybe like a conversation I had 5 years ago and it keeps coming back to my head, or you're like, oh, when I went to wherever I went to and I forgot to do that, or, you know, just stuff that you can't make it happen again and fix it, or you can't. So I thought, just that kind of obsessive thing that's happening, I'm gonna take a piece out of, you know, pieces out of the fiber pieces and focus on that little image. To me, was a metaphor for getting stuck in a memory that, you know, the memory is not the same as the actual thing. So that, to me, that was like the difference between the drawing and the, I don't know if that was very clear. It made sense to me, and I had been enjoying, you know, drawing. So they're ink wash and markers and pens, and so.
And I think you mentioned to me that they're just so much faster. You know,
Oh, yeah,
like,
well.
because the
Yeah.
3D, you know, tapestry pieces, you said take months, maybe even years to make them.
Yeah.
Because they're so involved, and the drawings really let you make something quickly.
A couple of weeks or something, yeah.
Absolutely.
It's a totally different feel for me to make art that fast, because, you know, I work every day if I can, and sew a lot. But I think when I made I made 5 or 6 of these 5-foot pieces in a year. That's all I did all year. So I was working on them all year, not one at a time. Anyway.
Does anyone else have any questions for Shawne? Yes, Kathy, and then Rob.
How do you know when you're finished with a piece?
Oh, that's a great
How do you
question.
know when you're finished, Shawne?
Well, I mean, that's a good question for any artist, but I think when it stops bothering me, you know, when I can look at it and I think, oh, it's not, I can't, you know, whatever. But it's not bothering me anymore.
I think you mentioned today to me that you don't remove anything, like once you add it.
Hardly ever. Probably less than 6 times in 30 years.
Right, and you also purposely add things that you find difficult to work with.
Oh yes, sometimes I'll intentionally put in a really difficult color to work with, a neon, like some of these have neon green, and then like spend the whole rest of the piece trying to make it work, or, you know, covering up part of it, but I mean, like the tension I'm after in the pieces. I want there to be layers of tension and layers of resolution, and then layers of tension. They're all kind of like about relationships, kind of, to me. I mean, they're abstract, but, you know, in my head, I'm thinking relationships.
It's about balance.
Did you ever try, did you ever do, like, you put that trimming, those big trimmings first, and then you go from there, or you go the other way around?
Do you put the big elements in first?
Yeah, those big trimming, those cords or whatever,
Like the big cord?
Yeah, the
Or
ropes.
ropes, like on that piece.
I like
special
those
cord.
because, I like those because especially over there, you know, that part, the design.
the
Do
bold.
you put that design first, or you go from there, or?
I don't know what they're gonna look like when I start.
Yeah.
So they're layered. So I'll put up fabric and poultry netting, and then I'll start. I don't overthink it because I don't want to get stuck. You know, I'm not going to do anything wrong. If I do something I don't like, I'll cover it up with something else. But I'll pin and sew, and then pin and sew, and look and pin and sew. So it's just back and forth. So there's just a lot of layers, and we see the stuff that's on top the easiest. You know, and in this case, it's usually rope.
I imagine that if you put those trimmings first, like in that one, that big rope in there, it gives you some sense to start. You didn't start that way.
I don't know. I don't think so. I think there's stuff under it. So I don't think I started with the rope. I think it was
About
later
over
on.
there, that one over there with the It looks
with this
really
white ribbon on it?
big design. I don't know, is that ribbon or is, I don't know what it is.
It's from a raincoat, actually. It's
raincoat.
like plastic, yeah. It's like a
My
rubber raincoat.
concern on something this large, how do you physically do all of the sewing? Well, you know, I've seen quilters with
Right.
quilting and, you know, might roll it up and do
Right.
part of it. That was my,
Yeah, these don't roll. Yeah. They don't want me to be handy. But I couldn't work that way either anyway because I need to see what it looks like. They're going to be shown on the wall.
Sure.
Right?
yeah.
Do you think that kind of comes from your painting background
Oh,
too? Yeah, because you are used to working in that format.
Yeah.
Rob, did you have a question?
You basically answered
Oh, okay.
the fact that you don't really extract much after you put it down. I mean, your extraction is clean, but then there's this wonderful random story that kind of runs through it all as you make choices for layers. It's really
Yeah.
pretty impressive.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, go ahead.
Of the pieces that you have here tonight, are there any that are your favorites and why? And is there a deeper meaning for any of them that kind of stand out in your mind?
It's like picking your favorite kid.
Kind
I
of.
mean, come on, you only have 2 kids. Bunch of pieces. I don't know. Which are my favorites? I don't know. I like this one a lot, just because the colors are so bright and poppy and like lifesaver candies. But
I love your titles. How do you go about picking your titles? Because they're really wonderful.
I was talking about the titles earlier with the 8th grade class, and I said, well, the titles are just sort of friends with the pieces, or in-laws, or they're like related somehow, but they're not. See, I don't want to make pieces that are, the title just illustrates the piece, you know. So you don't want to like read the title and you're like, oh, I get it, let me move on. You know, they just sort of are intended to stimulate imagination within an abstraction. So they're just friends, really, with the pieces. Yeah, so I don't know, I usually, at the end, you know, I hardly ever have a title early on, but by the end, I just follow different trains of what I've been thinking of, you know. I mean, I'll write down interesting words or comments all the time, you know, and then when the time comes when I have to do the title part, you know, then I'm just like, okay, these are the things it's on my mind. So.
Dario?
So you use a lot of objects that you say you get from other people or from eBay. And I'm curious if you've ever used an object that was personally significant.
Oh yeah, there's some in here probably.
Any personally significant objects in here? Any come to mind?
In this room, I don't know. My kids' toys have been in my work plenty of times, and sometimes clothes.
What about the raincoat?
Yeah, sometimes. Oh, that's a friend gave me those. But I mean, people do that. They're like, I'm throwing all this out. You think you want it? And I was like, I have trouble saying no. You know, it's people's junk. But
Well, if it's sight unseen, I mean, it could be great.
yeah. I mean, I like the raincoats. I would have never had. You know, I like the texture, and the plastic part of it is so like our contemporary problem. You know, plastic trash and yeah. So yeah, no, there is often. I mean, but I was asked this earlier, but you run out of your own stuff anyway. You gotta you don't want to be caught in just your own, you know, objects. But yeah, no, everything. Sometimes it's good. I like something. It's not enough to keep. I can just put it into art and it'll be kept. Right. But yeah, lots of toys mostly, and some junk jewelry. You know, yeah. I mean, some of the toys I don't know where it came from. Like some of these. In this piece, like there's a horse head and like that other shark thing. Somebody, I know, a biologist friend, had said, I found this stuff on the beach. Like, I knew you would want it. You know, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, I'll take it.
Do you think about your work a lot in terms of, you know, recycling and maybe making some kind of statement on how we can reuse objects in art making?
I don't really feel like it's a statement. It's just more about the way that I have my life. You know, I prefer to use things that have already had a life, you know, if I can. Sometimes I gotta buy new stuff, like the rope in that piece, you know, if I could have found that used, I certainly would have gotten it. But I mean, and I'm only saying that, I mean, I definitely care about our huge trash problem. And, but I don't feel like my work is like making that much of a dent as far as keeping stuff out of the landfill. So, you know, it's the way I live and my own personal sort of philosophy, but I don't feel like with my work I'm making a huge statement about, you know, reusing stuff. Or, I mean, I just do because there's so much stuff, you know. I mean, it just seemed like when I started using objects that it was so much a part of contemporary life that it was obviously going to be in an artist's vocabulary, you know. That was
You are helping the environment too.
this tiny, it's just so little bit.
Because so many of those jewelry people throw them in the garbage and you are keeping them and making something gorgeous and beautiful with them.
Oh, thank you.
It might inspire everyone to do a little bit more, and then we'll just have a whole lot of effort.
Maybe so, maybe so.
Thank you so much, Shawne.
Thank
and
you
thank you all tonight.
Thank you.